Welcome to Good Questions, Good Answer. Today we have another interesting question from our audience. And Venerable Sander to help us solve the problem again as well. Venerable Sander, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me on the program.
All right. Have you ever had deja vu before? Why do we have deja vu? Well, Venerable Sander, what do you have to say about this question?
Yeah, well, this is a question that I do get asked now and then by people who ask me what a deja vu is, and these kind of experiences do raise questions, and people have always wanted to know what it means when you have a deja vu. Some people, they might come to the Buddhist temple and feel this place, I've been here before, something like that.
Mm.
So this raises the question, what is a deja vu? How come we have them? And what are they, how are they caused, and what should we do about them?
Yeah, I've been wondering about that too. What is deja vu?
Yeah, so since our audience are from many countries, different languages, so let's first talk about what is a deja vu. So deja vu is a French word. It simply means already seen.
Oh.
And deja is already and vu is having seen. And the illusion of, according to Merriam-Webster, it's the illusion of remembering scenes and events when experienced for the first time. But even the Merriam-Webster allows from some interpretation. They don't all discard it as illusion. They will say a second meaning. They will say that it can also mean a feeling that one has seen or heard something before. So there's different definitions there. When you think about this experience of having seen or heard something before, which you couldn't possibly have seen or heard before, well, at least not in this lifetime, then 60 to 90% of people in scientific research report that they have had such an experience. So some reports find 60 or 70%, others find higher reports up until 90%, find higher numbers. There is, of course, different kind of explanations for this. So in science, they have already studied this for a while now, since the 19th century.
Wow, it's
And
been a while.
yeah. First of all, there was, of course, Freud and other theories in psychology, but now most of that is not continued upon. But the current theories about deja vu are either that it's a failure of or a mistake, a fault of the brain, or otherwise it's some fault of our memory, which explains the event. So according to neurology and psychology, it could mean either that you have some sort of electrical discharge in the brain, which sounds very dangerous, but it simply means that you have a small malfunctioning of the brain, and which is similar to somebody who has epilepsy and experiences deja vus because of his condition. But this is people can have this in general. It's not a very serious condition. It's just something that might happen to our brain. The second thing is that it might be that the part of our brain that deals with memory and familiarity is not functioning properly, and the short and long-term memory are out of sync. And there is also a more general theory about attention, which is not very specifically explained by the brain, which says that when we are not focused, for example, we are tired or we feel sleepy, we might not notice a certain memory and then regain awareness later and then go through the entire process again of noticing something. Therefore, we have the feeling that we have noticed or experienced it twice.
Yes.
So these are some theories that are proposed in science. But of course, there's also the more spiritual explanation, which is an entire different story.
Well, is there the story that you want to explain to us a little bit? about this deja vu thing in Buddhism term?
Within the framework of science and the paradigms of science, which basically says that we have only one lifetime and we just consist of brain and a body and that's it. But according to Buddhism, we also have a mind. And this is also not the first lifetime that we have been born,
Right.
according to Buddhism and many other Indian religions.
Mm-hmm. No, not yet.
There's a story in the time of the Buddha which says that there were two elderly couple.
Mm-hmm.
They saw the Buddha and ran to him and then bowed to him. They bowed and they prostrated on the floor. And then they said to the Buddha, my child, my child, my child. And of course, first of all, the attendant of the Buddha thought that, they might be crazy or something, or he didn't understand it.
Right.
But then it turned out that these two were actually recognizing the Buddha from previous lifetimes because he had been their son for many lifetimes. So in many lifetimes, they had already taken care of him, which is why they recognized him as his son, as their son.
Mm-hmm.
And these two, we do not exactly know their names. In the Buddhist text, they are just mentioned, they're just described as Nakula's parents.
Oh.
So there's Nakula's father and Nakula's mother, and their actual name is not given. But these two were actually very exemplary lay devotees in the time of the Buddha, and they practiced themselves very well and eventually attained a state close to enlightenment.
Oh, that's kind of remind me of the Jataka story, that every time then the Buddha tell the story, it must has be the repetition of the origin story. For example, when a monk doing something, the Buddha said this monk had done something, the same thing before in the previous life. And so he repeated again in this lifetime. So it is kind also some kind of deja vu as well?
Right. So we often see in the Jatakas that the Buddha will say, this is not the first time that so-and-so has done this and that, and even in the previous lifetime he did this and that, or something like that. And then, of course, the Buddha's disciples, they will ask, well, we know about the present lifetime, but could you please reveal what happened in previous lifetimes? Which shows that not every monk and nun in the time of the Buddha was able to access this kind of knowledge, but the Buddha was. So he was, he often talked about those previous lives. In the Jatakas, there are many examples of that.
Since you just mentioned about this deja vu that is related to Buddhism, is there any such a case in the modern time that you came across? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, there's actually, there was an interesting documentary which I found online about deja vus when trying to find information about this topic, which was made by an Indian filmmaker who was still a student at the time that she made that documentary. But despite her lack of experience as a filmmaker, the documentary is actually pretty good. And in that documentary, she actually interviews a Chinese Buddhist monk who, as a child, came to a temple, a Buddhist temple, and met a teacher. And all of this felt so familiar to him, as though he had been here many lifetimes. So he then decided, not so long after that, that he would become a monk. So he's actually being interviewed in that small documentary report. And this only shows that despite all the scientific explanations of brain failure and memory failure, this experience of deja vu actually has and still will have put many people on the spiritual path to perfection and trying to find more meaning in life. So whether people believe in previous lives or not, it's sure that deja vus do have a certain spiritual dimension.
That's quite interesting. I never heard of that before. As it is explained about the deja vu, well, can you tell us about how does it work this way, so that way we can see in the perspective of the Dhamma, so this way we can understand better how does deja vu work in the Buddhist concept?
according to Buddhism, we are more than just our brain. So the brain is just the office for the mind to work. But according
Right.
to Buddhism, there's also a mind, which
Okay.
is not some God-given, unexplained thing, but it actually has processes and different aspects to it and different parts to it. And one part of the human mind is that it has memory. And it may be possible, like in the case of the child that I just mentioned, who later became a Buddhist monk, that we can briefly access the contents of those memories. There's actually another case of a child known as James Leininger,
Uh-huh.
who became rather famous because of an ABC report, a report from the American television channel ABC,
Oh, that one. Okay.
about his previous lives. So
Yes.
he actually had a previous lifetime, which he remembered as a young child, that he had been a soldier, a pilot to be exact, during the Second World War, and his airplane was taken down by the Japanese, and he could remember very vivid and detailed explanations. Vivid details. So, and then his parents, who were very conservative Texan Americans, they 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 didn't know what to do with that, and eventually they did find that many of the things that their son was saying actually matched up with historical records, and eventually they were able to trace down the one of the relatives of that previous lifetime of that James. In the previous lifetime, he was also called James, and they discovered that there was a moment of recognition and familiarity when they met again between that relative and the new the child who could remember the previous life. So there was also recently they were interviewed again, and now James Leininger is already a teenager, and he still confirms that his experiences were real and not fabricated. And it's also a very interesting case because it's such a conservative environment. There would be nothing gained by coming up with this story and in such an environment. And eventually, they were able to find out that many of the information from their child matched with
Okay.
historical documents. Now,
That,
to come to that point, there's actually an entire department at the University of Virginia which investigates previous lifetimes of children. The children remember previous lifetime. They have investigated over 3,000 cases of children all over the world who remember previous lifetimes, and this was done by Ian Stevenson, and is currently continued by Jim Tucker, both of which have written books about previous lifetimes. So this is really a big topic, a huge topic. But of course, for many Buddhist, for many Thai people like yourself, this is just, so what? What's new? There's nothing new here for you. But for people in the West, this is very, very much an eye opener. And that's why for someone like Ian Stevenson, there's actually pictures that he's actually had very interesting discussions with the Dalai Lama about this topic, because at that time there was no one who could talk with him about these things. So, according to Buddhism, it's possible that we know about previous lifetimes through flashes of insight, but it's also more possible to systematically access previous lifetimes through meditation. We know this because the Buddha attained this knowledge, which we call the knowledge of previous lifetimes or previous abodes. And this knowledge was one of the three direct knowledges that he attained when he became enlightened.
I
And
see.
he describes this in much detail, that he could remember many lifetimes ago. And because of that, he gained wisdom and insight into the impermanence of things.
Well, now that you mentioned about this meditation thing and try and recall and the ability to recall the previous lifetime, which was recorded in our mind, it's kind of like our mind is like a storage that has a lot of files, and it
Right.
doesn't have the light. So when we are meditate and our mind is bright, we see all information in that storage, so we can select and see
Exactly.
what we want to see.
To end this program, it's quite nice to just have this small quote that I found. This is actually a book that has become pretty well known, which deals with previous lives. It's one of the only books in the West that deals with previous lifetimes.
Mm.
And it's called Cloud Atlas, and it very much deals with the topic of previous lifetimes and also with karma to some extent. And it has this nice quote, which is nearing the end of the book, and it says that we are bound to others, past and present, and by each crime and every kindness we birth our future. So I think that's a very nice quote to end with. So, so I'd like to leave it at that.
Is it a very good quote that gives us a food for thought for our life, how we live in our present that connect to the past? It is something that's quite interesting, showing that deja vu is also part of the connection to our mind that can recall of our previous existence or previous life. So that's in the conclusion here. We can see now that our life now had its own origins. We are not only just coming out of nowhere, we are from our own previous action, from the previous lifetime. And also everything in our life could happen. So that means it is uncertain. When it is uncertain, well, just mean that the way we live our life has its value. Everything that's happened to us, we are the one who created. So therefore, we have to make it as more valuable and most worth as much as we can. So that way, the remaining time in our life could be benefit and profit to ourselves and everyone who living and we get to and who are knowing us. So well, thank you very much, Venerable Sander, for helping us solving this problem. Why do we have deja vu? It will be quite important knowledge for how we live our life from now on. We hope to see you
Yes.
again, everyone, for our next question. Hope to see you again next time. Thank you, Sander.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you again next time.